Welcome to the Living After Faith podcast, here to help you recover from the damage of religion and move forward with your life, putting the emphasis on living after faith. This is the official podcast of recoveringfromreligion.org. Now with today's program on Living After Faith, here's Rich and Deanna Joy Lyons.
I'm Rich Lyons.
I'm Deanna Joy Lyons.
I'm Libbie Grant.
Shelley Siegel here. Come laugh with me.
And the fact that we have Libbie Grant with us today is special. She is joining us as a co-host. You've heard her on Ask an Atheist. You actually heard her here, but you didn't know it. She was incognito on the episode where we talked about the movie The Ledge. So, Libbie, great to have you with us.
Thanks. It's good to be back.
A little bit about Libbie's background. She's a former Mormon.
I am.
And a writer who has written a book called?
Well, I wrote a novel. Its working title is Baptism for the Dead, but that in the publishing industry can be subject to change. But basically, it's a novel about a closeted atheist woman who is living in a very conservative, isolated Mormon community, and she's married to a closeted gay man. So they have an interesting marriage, to say the least.
Yeah, and she's going to be our go-to guest host on all things Mormon. So you can guess our guest today is also a Mormon.
Mark Palmer is Executive Director of the Humanists of Florida Association. He's also host of the Human Tales podcast, and the most recent episode of that actually is him giving a big talk on Mormonism at a group meeting. So that's a fantastic listen as well. And he also does just an amazing amount of activism, and he's arranging a conference too. So welcome to the show, Mark. Tell us what you're doing.
Thank you for having me. My name is Mark Palmer, and I got permission beforehand that I could put a plug in for my Twitter handle,
yes,
which is at @atheist_ESQ. I am a lawyer, so that's Atheist Esquire.
And we will also put a link to that with the episode that posts. So if you're listening,
you are so kind.
Find the link, click it, and you can follow him right away.
Ooh. And also to put a plug in for the conference we're having. The Humanists of Florida Association is putting on a small conference in Tallahassee, Florida on the 21st of April. And thereat, we will have Shelley Siegel, who played on the stage of the Reason Rally with Tim Minchin in Bad Religion. And also we will have Teresa McBain, the lovely woman who came out as an atheist at the American Atheist National Convention, who happens to be a local here in Tallahassee when she was a Methodist pastor up a little north of town.
And she is absolutely a fabulous person. That is going to be an awesome conference. And we want to thank you for what you're doing in supporting Teresa, by the way. That is just an incredible thing that you guys have stepped up and done.
Thank you very much. I think Rich is referring to the Humanists of Florida Association covering Teresa's previous preacher salary for a year until she can get back on her feet. She did not actually come out knowing that she would be getting that money. She was going to come out anyway, but this should make her landing much softer, at least for the first year, until she can get her feet wet doing other things.
I'm going to cry again just hearing that.
I know, that's great.
We bawled our eyes out at the table in the bar when we all heard that, but that's fabulous. Thank you so much, Mark.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your background, Mark. I've listened to some of your podcasts, and it is absolutely fascinating to hear you speak. I don't know a lot about Mormonism, but from what I've heard from you, you guys take this stuff seriously.
Oh, very seriously. Mormon mythology, and again, when I use the word mythology referring to any religion, I try and use it in the anthropological sense, meaning just the shared cultural history that a people have, how they view the world and how they view history. And so in Mormon mythology, they take it very seriously. They have a view of the universe that is, well, unique to them. But it's how the world is. And if you haven't seen that yet, well, then they should tell you about it and let you know the truth about how the universe operates.
Yeah, there are a lot of, I guess you could call them kooky mythology systems around Mormonism that, some people know some of them and some people don't know very much about them. I know the more I learn, the more my jaw just kind of drops. So were you born into the faith, or was it something you converted to?
I was born into the faith. My family on both sides for about 5 generations have been Mormon. My family came through a Mormon colony, which is now known as Mesa, Arizona. It's just in the outskirts of Phoenix. Back in the Brigham Young days in Utah, he sent several groups of families to other parts of the American Southwest and into Canada and down into Mexico. One of the Mormon colonies that was founded in the 1800s was Mesa, Arizona, which is where all my family came through. It used to be probably 70 or 80% Mormon. And nowadays that's gone down to perhaps 20 or 30%.
That's still a lot, though.
Still a lot of Mormons.
Yeah. Arizona is a big place for Mormons.
So I hear. Now, Libbie, how about you? How did you get into things?
I was also born into a Mormon family, lived in eastern Idaho in a town called Rexburg, which is the present home of BYU Idaho. It used to be Ricks College. The founder of the town Rexburg was named Thomas Ricks and is a relative of mine. I'm descended from him. My maiden name was Ricks. My family had lived in Rexburg, which is definitely a Mormon majority town. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's probably over 80% at least.
Can I quickly interject a funny story about Ricks College?
Oh,
which
please
is now
do.
BYU, Idaho?
Yes.
All right. So when I was probably 16, I went on this program that the Mormon Church does, which is especially for youth, where you go off to a Mormon college for a week and you go to a week-long conference about all things Mormonism directed at teenagers.
Oh, I'm so
I
sorry.
went to Ricks College at the time, this was before it was BYU Idaho. And so you eat at the dining facility there at the college. And one of the meals that they had there was called Rick's Surprise.
I know about Rick's Surprise. This is awesome.
Yeah, Rick's Surprise. And so what this meal item was, the main dish, was a meatloaf wrapped around a dill pickle.
Surprise!
It was revolting.
Oh, God. Yeah, so that's my hometown. It's a meatloaf wrapped around a dill pickle. That's pretty much the best metaphor ever. So, yeah, my family, my two parents were kind of the black sheep of the family, but the rest of the family, having been, rooted in Rexburg since its founding back in practically the Brigham Young days, was very Mormon, like hyper Mormon, super Mormon. And I have a very large family. I have, I think, 49 first cousins on my dad's side, to give you some idea of how big the family is. And
whoa,
out of everybody in my family, presently, my sister and I, one of my uncles, and I believe two of my cousins are the only non-believers out of everyone. Everyone is still a Mormon.
I'm glad you've got a little support around you. A few people,
yeah. My uncle actually founded the website postmormon.org, which he and I didn't know one another, that we were both mutually atheists now, until I kind of stumbled across his website. I was like, oh, what's this? I'm like, oh, that's my uncle. Weird. So I sent him an email, and yeah.
I love that. That's one of the arguments for being an open atheist as much as you can be, is that, people stumble upon those that they know, and they don't know that they know an atheist.
Yeah,
so
it's great.
How cool is that?
So, Mark, describe a little bit about the intensity of the religion, your position, and where you were at the peak of Mormonism for Mark Palmer.
Okay, I'll just take you through the quick timeline.
Cool.
I was a devout believer my entire life, probably until the age of 27. And starting at the age of 12 is the age when young men in the Mormon Church first get the priesthood. And the priesthood in Mormon speak is the authority to act in the name of God. In other words, the authority to perform rituals. And so starting at age 12, I received that lower priesthood, started passing the sacrament of the Lord's Supper. I became my deacon's quorum president at the age of 13. In other words, I was in charge of leading this small group of 12 and 13-year-olds in their holy duties. Thereafter, I did serve a Mormon mission at the age of 19. I went to Jacksonville, Florida to sell Mormon snake oil to people and try and convince them to become Mormons. That was an interesting experience. Went back to Brigham Young University, where I graduated from in 2002. At the time, or while I was there at the university, I got married. I had my first child before my ex-wife and I had even graduated with our undergraduates. I taught several levels of Mormon class there, Mormon Sunday school, from the lowest level, like Gospel Essentials, which is kind of the Sunday school class for new Mormons, up through Gospel Doctrine, which is like the Sunday school class for folks who have been doing this for 50 years. And so it was partly my responsibility to teach them the Mormon mythology from new and interesting perspectives and help them learn new things. After graduating from Brigham Young University, I moved to Tampa, where I eventually became the Elders Quorum president in my congregation, and that is the leader of the men's ministry. So age 18 to 50-ish, I was over all the men in the congregation, organizing that, leading that organization, teaching lessons, etc. And it was at that point, while I was Elders Quorum president, that I started to have my serious doubts and eventually lost my faith while still in that position.
Wow.
It was interesting and uncomfortable to be in that position, trying to be an example for all these guys in my congregation when I wasn't buying it anymore.
I'm going to make an assumption and say that you didn't just wake up one morning and say, this is all bullshit.
No, not at all. It's a long process, like it is for all of us. Everybody I talk to who has never been religious before or who has never been an atheist, I always have to explain to them exactly what you said. You don't just wake up one morning and say, all this stuff I believed my entire life, it's all trash. It's all bullshit. I don't believe in anything anymore. That's not how it works. It was a multi-year long process for me also. And it began, I think, to some extent, just being unhappy in my marriage, which, I'd lived my life trying to do everything that I'd been taught. And I should be reaping all these blessings of happiness and fulfillment in life that I wasn't having any of. And so that was probably what opened the door to me to start questioning, for me to start looking at other things. I also spent a lot of time just looking at other believers. So I worked in corporate Verizon there in Tampa for a few years. And we had people on my team who were Hindu and Muslim and Baptist and atheist. And it was interesting because I started thinking from an objective perspective, looking at all these people, is there any way I could tell which of them had the truth? Because from all of these different perspectives, as far as I could tell, it didn't really matter. It didn't make a hill of beans difference about what kind of father you were, husband you are, daughter, wife, coworker, boss, whatever. It didn't make a difference what religion you were. There were assholes and there were fantastic people of all belief systems, including the atheists. And so that started me thinking, what does my religion have to offer besides the magical blessings in the next life? What do we have to offer here that other people can't get? And I couldn't honestly put my finger on anything.
One thing I want to point out here is that people don't really realize sometimes, and I remember I went through the same thing, is you're living from a perspective of true believers. So you know that you're actually living the shit that people say you have to do. I remember looking in the mirror and saying, as though I were talking to God, saying, I lived it right. That I did those things, and this is not supposed to happen to someone who really actually lives it. And when you know yourself and you really do that thing, it doesn't give God much wiggle room.
No. And I mean, you always start, of course, with the self-blaming, where it's like, am I not reading my scriptures enough? Am I not praying enough? Am I not, what sin am I committing that is preventing these blessings from coming into my life? Because God wouldn't let me down. But after a while, you start asking the other question, which is, well, maybe he's not there, or maybe he's not there in the way I've been taught my entire life.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, so you get over the self-blame after a while.
Yeah.
You didn't wake up one day, Libbie, and just decide, okay, it's all bullshit.
No, like I said, my parents were kind of black sheep. My mom was far more liberal and more feminist than any Mormon woman is supposed to be.
Sing the song.
Oh, yes.
You have to sing the song.
So I was telling Rich
Shelley
and Deanna.
Siegel has no worries here, but go ahead. Sing.
Yeah, no worries at all. I was telling Rich and Deanna that as I was growing up with all these cousins, our family was close-knit. We would spend a lot of time with aunts and uncles and cousins. And my mom, first of all, only had 2 children, my sister and me. She stopped there. She didn't want any more. And the family thought that was terrible. They actually, strangely, often hinted that she was a lesbian because she only wanted 2 children. I don't know how they made that leap of logic.
Yeah.
But, we would go hang out with the family, and my little girl cousins would run around singing this song that they all liked, which went like this. And I'm sorry, my singing is terrible, but it went, "When I grow up, I want to be a mother and raise myself a family. 1 little, 2 little, 3 little babies of my own." And every time we get back in the car, and my mom would look at my sister and me and say, "You can be anything you want to be. You do not only have to be a mother." So that was kind of the exposure I had, and the example I had of femininity was my mom, who was kind of subversively going behind the rest of the family's back and saying, "Yeah, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to buy into the party line." So I kind of grew up with that as my sort of secret example of what I could be as a Mormon and a woman, that I could kind of be a little bit rebellious, and as long as I kept it secret, it was okay. So I, unlike you, I did not follow all the proscribed things I was supposed to do. I was somewhat sexually adventurous as a teenager, but I kept it quiet, and I did my own thing. And right around the time when I was like 19, 20, I started to sort of say to myself, well, maybe God's not real. I mean, it's possible that this is all just mythology, but I like it, so I'm just going to keep believing in it. And I went along with that. And then my father passed away when I was 23, and it was a surprise. It kind of came out of nowhere, and I was sort of shocked by the news. And I remember kind of walking off into my bedroom and kneeling down and saying, well, I should pray now. This is the time when people pray. So I started to say a prayer, and I stopped, and I just kind of went, I'm not praying to anything. There's nothing there. So I just got up and went about my business of grieving my father. And then a couple days later, I traveled out to Idaho for the funeral and saw my family again and sat in a church again and everything, this time knowing that I didn't believe, which was an interesting experience, kind of strange and alienating, but it was interesting. I don't know. I don't really know how to describe it. It was just odd. It was an odd feeling of sitting there and listening to the prayers and the hymns and everything and saying, this is just pretend.
So, Mark, when you decided you were an atheist, where did you go from there? What happened next?
Well, I guess first let me talk about the day I did my little experiment, which was for me, what I call it now is taking the God goggles off. After I'd been going over this questioning for years, I decided to just try an experiment one day where I would assume that God doesn't exist, assume there is no supernatural power over the world. How does the world look and feel? And after doing that, one time, I could never stop doing it again. And I prayed over and over again and sincerely that I could get that old faith I used to have back. But it was like trying to fit myself back into a snow globe world that I was just too big for now.
Yeah.
And all the water ran out and made a mess on the floor.
Yeah. Plus there was glitter everywhere.
That glitter. Oh, my God.
So the experiment led you to a place where you just can't believe anymore. And see, so many believers look at me and say, well, can't you just make yourself believe? And nope. That is such an absurd thought. I love to ask them, what would I have to do to convince you that the tooth fairy, the whole story, not that it's your mom and dad, that there really is a tooth fairy that flies to all the children's homes that had lost teeth and gives money for the teeth? And what would I have to do to convince you of that? And they look at me like, well, there's no way you could. And I'm like, you're right.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I am.
And I've heard that question too. And I also wonder, do these people believe that they are just making themselves believe too? Like, do they think it's that easy because they think that they're just saying, I believe because I want to? But I don't know if it's possible to really believe just because you want to.
I tried that for a long time. I tried that so hard. I did not want to be an atheist. I really didn't want to be.
Yeah.
I really wanted this whole Christian thing to work out. I'd made good money at it. I, was hoping I could hook up with a different group of people, find a chaplaincy, something. And, I really, really, really didn't want to be the atheist. That was the hardest. I mean, if that's what I chose, I was really pretty stupid. So, Mark, where did you go from the experiment? And your experiment's awesome, by the way.
Ryan, so here's what happened. Here's what happened after that. Is first I asked to be let go from my calling. In other words, my church job as Elders Quorum president. I asked to be let go from that, which the leadership in the congregation slowly allowed me to do. And they instead made me a Sunday school teacher for 12 and 13-year-olds.
Oh, great.
Which is kind of like being put out to pasture.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I tried to do that, but there was this one lesson one day that I was supposed to teach out of the lesson manual. And I found myself just not being able to do it. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but it was something about, Satan attacking one of the early Mormon church leaders while he was a small baby or something like that. And I was like, I can't teach this. This is bullshit. So I just closed the lesson book that day in class. And I said, you know what? Be good people. Be nice to other people. That's what matters. And I believe it was the week after that when the leader over several congregations was in ours speaking. And he gave the definition of integrity, which was to him where your thoughts, words, and actions are all in harmony. And I knew that mine were not. And after that point, I knew I needed to stop going to church and stop pretending.
Wow.
Of course, there was also the conflict with my ex-wife at the time, as I was going through this deconversion process in my head, where initially, at one point, she asked me out on this quote-unquote date, where we were going to walk around out in nature for a while and have a chat. And her intention at the beginning of this date, I found out later, was to tell me that I needed to either get my faith back or that she was going to get a divorce.
Ouch.
However, what ended up happening on this walk/datey thing is I ended up expressing honestly my feelings and my doubts and my reasons for having those. And she ended up coming forward with some doubts that she had had since she was a child. And we ended up leaving the Mormon church together.
Wow. I did not expect that twist, I must say.
Right. It was really weird. I wasn't expecting it at the time either. Which probably began the best 6 months of our entire marriage was after that point where we both walked away from the Mormon church. But, old habits die hard. And in the end, I think the Mormon church is all we really had in common. And we did end up getting a divorce later.
That's really amazing. I didn't expect that.
Wow. So you come out, you at this point are still married, and are you atheist at this point? Are you just not a Mormon?
After leaving Mormonism, I rejected Christianity about 5 minutes later. Because as a Mormon, Mormons actually care quite a bit about teaching you about other religions. They're much more serious about that than I think most religions are. Most religions, I get the impression, don't want to expose you to what other religions believe.
Yeah, right.
Mormons don't seem to have that same phobia, at least in my experience. And so when I rejected Mormonism, I had already spent my whole life learning what other religions believe and why they should be easily rejected. And so it was a quick process to get rid of Christianity as well. I spent maybe 6 months thereafter calling myself a deist until I finally asked myself honestly, what evidence do I have for that? Oh, none? Okay, fine, I'm an atheist.
Yeah.
A lot of times it seems like people spend some time kind of in the realm of, well, I don't really believe in God, but I'm not an atheist.
Yeah.
Because it's, it's a hard thing to do, especially like Rich's part of the world. That was the most demonic, evil, baby-killing person that you could be, was an atheist. And even in, more liberal circles, you know that it's not acceptable. I mean, I hesitate before I tell people that, I'm close to, that I'm an atheist, because I know that word is going to turn them off.
That's funny. I get some kind of perverse glee out of it. Telling people I'm an atheist. I'll meet them, and if they ask any question relating to church or religion, oh, I'm an atheist. I just spit it right out, and I find it hilarious.
That's great. I think it's my cultural conditioning as a woman. I'm not supposed to offend people.
Right,
on
we're
purpose.
Supposed to be nice.
I'm supposed to be nice and not upset someone. Okay.
And as a man, I'm supposed to upset someone.
Exactly.
All right.
We're in charge,
You get carte
bitches.
blanche. You can do
That's
whatever.
right.
It's not fair.
I can do whatever I want. I have a penis. Right.
That's right.
So, speaking of which, Libbie. So, Libbie, when you left the church, tell us what happened.
Oh, it's going to be a very boring story. Nothing happened. I feel very lucky because I've talked to and heard on podcasts so many people who had traumatic experiences or even just like felt nervous and anxious about coming out as an atheist and leaving their faiths. None of that happened for me. I just I was talking to my sister one day and I said, yeah, I don't believe in God anymore. And she goes, yeah, I don't either. And I was like, oh, okay. And, we went to the store or whatever we were going to do that day. And the rest of my family really took it in stride. I feel very lucky that my family, for whatever flaws they may have, as all families have flaws, they're very supportive of things like this. And they, frankly, didn't care. In fact, my mom thinks that it's awesome that I do Ask an Atheist sometimes. And she likes to listen to it. And no one really reacted strongly, which part of that I think has something to do with the Mormon faith, their vision of an afterlife. Nobody in my family thought that I was in danger of going to hell because Mormons don't exactly believe in that. So they felt bummed out that I wouldn't attain super awesome mega heaven. But I don't think anybody, they would prefer that I would be religious and that I would be Mormon, but nobody, no one thinks that I'm in danger of permanent permanent trouble in the afterlife because I always have a second chance in the afterlife is what Mormons believe in. So
speaking of that attitude, there was quite a bit more brouhaha in my family, it sounds like, than yours when I came out as an atheist.
Yeah.
But one of my brothers, who is still very devout, said, well, at least you didn't become some other religion. That would be way stupider than being an atheist.
Yeah.
So that's the Mormon attitude on that, I guess.
That's awesome.
Wow. So, Mark, what happened in your situation when you finally make the pronouncement, okay, I'm done with this. You all go be nice people, and that's what's really important. What happened next?
All right. Well, I do tend to make I like to cause all my problems in very short and hard duration rather than prolonging my problems over a long period of time. So I did send everybody in my immediate family a big fat email explaining what I believed and why I believed it, and that I'm not out to convert them. I'm just trying to be honest, and got it all over with. And I'm very grateful that I did that. I came running out of the closet. Everybody freaked out for 2 or 3 weeks. And then they all kind of got accustomed to this new person in their life who is not who they thought he was weeks before. But no, I have not been rejected by my family. I have a different relationship with them than I ever did before. I miss the closeness I had with my brothers that I don't have now. But you just move on. After being an atheist for about a year, and also after my divorce from my ex, I decided I need to start having some kind of society and friends because I didn't really have that while I was married. I need to start getting out and meeting people. And so I went on meetup.com. And by this point, I'd moved from Tampa to Tallahassee and had been through my first year of law school. And so I went on meetup.com, found a post in the Tallahassee Atheist group. Didn't look like they'd done anything for months. But one guy said, hey, I'll be hanging out at this coffee shop on Sunday if anybody wants to hang out with me. I went to hang out with him. For about 2 months, it was just us bumming around town talking about anything. That's another mistake people make about atheists. We don't just talk about atheism all the time because atheism is not a thing.
Right.
So we ended up talking about, sex, drugs, rock and roll, movies, life, work, etc., puppies, whatever that people are into. So I consider this moment where he and I started hanging out at a coffee shop as the founding of the Tallahassee Atheists. And I am still heavily involved with that group. I've kind of turned it over to another person since becoming executive director of the Humanists of Florida Association. But the Tallahassee Atheists are going crazy right now, doing awesome things. We just put up our first billboard at the beginning of this month.
Hooray.
We've gotten 54 new members in the first week after the billboard went up.
Wow.
We had a record-setting number of 45 atheists at a Panera Bread last Sunday.
Wow, nice.
It was crazy. We've got a big old chili cook-off planned for the end of the month. And I love what the atheist community has become here in Tallahassee since its humble beginnings at a coffee shop with 2 guys in 2008.
That's great. Congratulations.
Absolutely awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, and you guys did the road unanointing too,
yes.
didn't you?
Yeah, we can talk about the road unanointing.
Yes.
Yes.
I absolutely love this because
Oh, me too.
I was the guy who would have been anointing the road. And then 6 weeks later, I was the guy who was using anointing oil for my first anal sex experiment.
There you go.
And then the next week, I would have been out there unanointing the road. So, but let's let Mark explain what this is. And I absolutely love it. I've heard some people say, oh, that's wasted effort. And I'm like, no.
If you're talking about it, it's not wasted effort.
No.
Yeah, the press you got, it's awesome. So
Exactly.
tell us what led to this and how this even happened.
So at a CFI conference in Orlando, my boss, Ellen Beth Walks, who's the president of the Humanists of Florida Association, she was talking about this story we'd never heard of before, where this Polk Under Prayer group, which is a Polk County group of Christian churches, they get together, they pool resources, they buy billboards, and they try and help Christianity in Polk County, which is one of the rural counties in the middle of Florida. What this group did is they decided that they were going to perform a magic holy ritual in Polk County. And they went to every road going in and out of the county, poured a strip of oil across the road. I mean, inherently that sounds dangerous, but that's not the point. They poured the strip of holy oil across the road and prayed that angels would come down and inspect every vehicle going in and out of the county. And that any person who would not, quote, submit to God's way of living would be incarcerated or ejected from the county. That was the prayer.
See, I don't think. Obviously, I saw a lot of discussion of what you guys did afterward on Facebook. Many people saying that they were against it, and it was just this needless show of bombast or whatever. But if they had done a prayer that everybody would be safe and the roads would be safe and no one would get in a tragic accident, I don't think you guys would have minded so much. It's the everybody will act like a Christian or go to jail thing that pisses people off.
The fact that you have to you can't even say ignore. You have to be just totally ignorant of this concept of separation of church and state when your first thought is we're going to use the jail to enforce our Christian belief. I mean, you can't even say you're ignoring First Amendment. You are...
No, you're basically taking a dump on it.
Yeah, yes. You're in that place where you don't even know it's there.
Nothing says Christianity like using the Constitution as toilet paper.
That's for sure.
Exactly.
It does get worse than this wacky prayer, right? Even if that's all they had done, with just some Christian churches doing their wacky prayer, even if I saw it as horribly bigoted and stupid, we still wouldn't have cared. But this same Polk Under Prayer group on March 1st, 2011, they put up a billboard that had 3 pictures on it. It was the mayor of Lakeland, Gow Fields, the sheriff of Polk County, Grady Judd, and Sherry Nickel, the superintendent of Polk County Schools, had their names, their pictures, their political titles, and Grady Judd, the sheriff in uniform, on this billboard that said, Polk Under Prayer, Christian Churches of Polk County. So this same group that was praying for the incarceration
has the sheriff on their side,
got the public endorsement of the 3 biggest political leaders in Polk County. That was the problem.
That is, that's pretty much the definition of outrageous right there. That's clearly government officials are on the side of Polk Under Prayer. They're endorsing these things that they do, whether tacitly or vocally, verbally,
or in
quite
this
loud.
case, openly on a billboard.
On a billboard, right?
Government official with a gun on one side and keys to the jail on the other.
Yeah, I'm staying the hell out of Polk County. I don't know.
Seriously, I mean, First Amendment does not exist. So because of this taking a shit on the Constitution, you decided to take action.
Right. We decided to take action. And actually, this was the idea of John Porgel, who is the present leader of the Tallahassee Atheists. It's the guy I kind of turned the keys over to when I went on to the HFA. And he asked me for some help in writing a press release, which I did to try and get a little, drum a little press up. It's the first press release I ever did. And so we had John Porgel from the Tallahassee Atheists. I was there representing the Humanists of Florida Association. We had a past president of Atheists of Florida. We had the vice president of CFI Tallahassee. We had the incoming president of the FSU Freethinker student group. And we all went down there. And John, unbeknownst to me, had this big tank of water in the back of his truck and put a sign on it that said unholy water, which the press really latched onto when that picture started going around. But I gave a little speech. You can hear the whole speech on the Huffington Post article when they end up reporting this. I gave a little speech. We sprayed this pure water across the road and unanointed it because, as the joke goes, oil and water don't mix. So we were taking away the blessing, allegedly, taking away the alleged blessing on the roads in Polk counties and inviting everybody in and trying to thumb our nose a bit at the government support of this wacky group that would pray for the incarceration of all those who do not submit to God's way of living.
Good for you. That's the kind of protest and the kind of demonstration I think really gets people's attention and really makes people understand what's truly at issue here, which is not, atheists and Christians, they don't like each other. It's Polk County is crapping on the Constitution, and somebody needs to do something about it. So you guys did. You started it. You started the conversation about it, and I think it's excellent.
And got a shitload of press.
Yeah.
It got a shitload. Most of the press got it wrong and did the exact angle of atheists do counter ritual to hate on Christian ritual,
right?
Which is, of course, not the point. And I can't count the number of Christians who posted things in comments and otherwise that said, if you're atheist and you don't believe the prayer had any power, why are you doing a ritual to stop it? And I just want to smack my palm against my face repeatedly.
Yeah.
You don't get the point. Your oil wasn't magic. Our water isn't magic. I got that.
Yeah. Sometimes people can be a little unbelieving in the fact that people don't believe in magic.
Right.
They don't understand that you really don't believe what they believe.
Yeah, and that is so common. They just don't get the idea that you really don't fucking believe.
Yeah.
I try and help people understand that concept sometimes by comparing, their Christianity with somebody else's Hinduism.
Right.
Just to try and give it from a religious perspective. It's like, see this Hindu here? They don't believe in God the Father. They don't believe in Jesus Christ. They don't believe in your version of heaven and hell. They don't believe in your devil. They don't believe in baptism. They don't believe in the Bible. They don't believe any of that stuff. They have other gods and other scriptures, but they don't believe anything that you do. Yet, they're here. We all want them to be, citizens of our country and part of our community and good families and everything, even though they don't believe anything that you do. And so I try and use that as comparison. I'm not sure how well it works.
Yeah.
Well, those people are just rebelling against what they know is the true God, so they can sin.
Satan's got them.
They're so hung up on not eating beef that they don't want to follow the real God, so they can keep not eating beef.
Yeah.
Because everybody knows that Jesus wore a cowboy hat and ate lots of.
That's it. Yeah.
You saw the whole Rick Perry ad. I mean, yeah.
Well, Jesus obviously was not a vegetarian. You saw how he cursed that fig tree.
Oh, that's right.
And he served fish that he made himself.
Ooh,
That was a pretty good trick.
that is a pretty
I
good.
still haven't figured out how he did that.
Spontaneously generate fish. That would be delicious.
I know, right? Well, I guess it depends, how you spontaneously generate it.
Well, if I did it out my asshole, that would be very
That would not be
Not
so
so
good.
good.
No
Yeah.
brown trout.
Yeah.
No brown trout.
Oh. How did we go there?
We are so awful.
Living After Faith, your classy podcast.
That's right. So we've unanointed the road. Now, are you the person we can talk to about the things that did transpire in Washington, D.C. involving Teresa and the fact that you guys are basically taking you under her wing, or is that a different group?
Well, see, no, I mean, we are taking her under our wing, but I'm worried in the end, well, not worried, maybe excited is a better word, that she'll be taking us under her wing. She got a whole lot more press coming out as an atheist at the American Atheist Convention, I think even than we did for an anointing a road. And she, well, frankly, deserved it more. She's a fantastic individual, an amazing public speaker. If you've watched the video on the Richard Dawkins Foundation, that was filmed, by the way, by John Porgal, the leader of the Tallahassee Atheists. But she's a fantastic public speaker. She's going to do great things, both for the Clergy Project, where she's going to be volunteering some of her time, and with the Humanists of Florida, where she'll be volunteering a bunch of other parts of her time, if we can get proper approval from the board, which should be forthcoming.
Yeah, we got audio of Teresa speaking at the conference, too. So
Yeah, we've got the audio. That's one of our episodes. Also did a joint episode with Atheist and Atheist where we had Teresa and Jerry DeWitt both on the program at the same time. So she is a fabulous speaker.
Yeah.
Now, tell us, she's kind of, and I have a new favorite. I absolutely am in love with Shelley Segal.
and I don't mind.
Or Shelley Siegel. I always say it wrong. I'm absolutely in love with her. It's so funny. We were sitting at the bar right after we had heard the announcement that Teresa was not going to be broke, and everybody on that side of the table was crying, and I was just happy and everything. And this
He
girl
was
reaches,
making goo-goo eyes at her.
this girl reaches across the table and says, "Hi, I'm Shelley," and I never even spoke. I'm like, because I recognized her from her video that I had put on my Facebook wall 100,000 times, and the day her CD came out on iTunes, I downloaded it. I mean, within hours of it first hitting, I probably was the first downloader in the top 10 anyway. I mean, I just love her music.
Yeah.
And you've got Shelley Siegel, you've got Teresa McBain. Tell us about this event you've got coming up.
All right, on the 21st, we will have those two. Shelley will be providing the entertainment. Teresa will be our keynote speaker. I will also be speaking there. In addition to me, there's going to be a former law professor of mine named Robert Atkinson Jr., who is a tenured law professor here at the Florida State University College of Law, and a big proponent of what he likes to call the Republic. And it's more or less a philosophical concept of a pluralistic society that we should all be living in, and should, as lawyers and lawmakers, trend our country and government towards. So that's going to be fantastic. He's an amazing public speaker who, like Tim mentioned, tends to not wear shoes while he's doing it.
Fun.
Interesting.
What are you not going to be wearing?
What am I? I won't be wearing underwear.
All right. Excellent.
No, just kidding. I will. Even when I wear my kilt, which I was wearing at the American Atheist Convention, I don't do it true Scotsman style, just because I'm not that ballsy, I guess is the right word.
Apropos.
But in addition to those folks who are speaking, we also have Rabbi Jack Romberg, who is the rabbi of the large synagogue here in Tallahassee. He was also a plaintiff and works pretty closely with Americans United for the separation of church and state. He was a plaintiff in a lawsuit to get rid of an evil amendment we've got coming up here in Florida to amend the Florida Constitution to re-entangle church and state as much as possible. So he will be speaking.
Excellent.
And we have Mandisa Thomas, who is the president and founder of the Black Nonbelievers. She's coming down from Atlanta.
I'm so excited. We love her.
Yeah.
We're working with her to help try and book a Great and Square show in Seattle. We got to meet her in D.C. That was really awesome.
Ooh, I didn't know that was in the works. I'm excited now.
I know, right?
It's going to correspond with HempFest. Can you imagine this? HempFest, Mandisa Thomas, Graydon Square, and
everyone's going to be super stoned.
Is this going to be awesome or what?
Everybody's going to love that music so much, Jude.
It does, yeah. So what are you going to be speaking about?
Well, the general theme of the conference is how do we shift the public attitude towards being okay with religion being a topic that is open for study, open for civil disagreement, open for discourse, kind of remove the kid gloves that our culture has had towards religion and treat it like any other concept or idea. Treat it like politics, like sports, etc. It's just another idea. Let it properly fare for itself as it can or can't in the marketplace of ideas. So how do we bring society to that point? I hope to talk a little bit about some of the work I've read from Jonathan Haidt, if you're familiar with him.
I don't think I am. I might be.
He's a psychologist, I believe, out of Harvard, who talks about cultural morality and what are the foundations of morality that go across human cultures.
Interesting.
And he's got some really interesting ideas that talk about a typical liberal morality and a typical conservative morality and how those are similar, how they're different, and how they exist throughout the world, regardless of culture. It's fascinating. So I want to talk about how we can make people more aware of those moralities and how we can just expect them to stay here. They're not going anywhere. But how, despite that, we can come to agreements about what society should and shouldn't be focused on, especially from a legal standpoint, morally speaking. So I don't know if that was too complex. It'll definitely be more concrete when I actually take the time to write my talk, which I've not done yet.
I feel your pain. It's all right.
Yeah. No, but it'll be good times. One thing I intend to talk about, I'd love to make this point, speaking specifically about gay marriage, right?
Yes.
And going back to my Hindu example, I'm going to tie these together. So you have the first and great commandment. What is the first and great commandment according to the Bible that Christians are supposed to live by?
The first is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your balls, with all your feet, with all your teeth, with all the things that you have and
all
things
that good
you don't
stuff.
even have.
That is the first and great commandment. And so I'm going to give the example again, going back to the Hindus. These are people who are breaking the first and great commandment. They are violating it. They do not love or believe in the Lord your God at all. However, we still all, Christian and otherwise, expect them to be American citizens, to have full legal rights of marriage, etc. So why can we not apply the same to homosexuals or atheists or anything else? No, they break the first commandment too. Yeah. And so it shouldn't matter that they're breaking other of your commandments.
Right.
Why not, even if they are going to hell later, why not let them have equal rights under the law exactly as Hindus have?
I like that.
That's a great way to put it.
That's a great point, too. And it's never made much sense to me that, okay, if you believe that it's wrong and it's a sin and they're going to hell, fine, believe that. Who cares? They still should be able to enter into a contract, which is what marriage is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think a big part of it, and I don't want to get too down on the anti-gay marriage people, is that they honestly believe that it's going to destroy society to have, being gay be okay. And it's just,
I can see the mushroom clouds on the horizon already.
I know, right?
Yeah.
They think that, as a culture, we're moving towards such permissiveness and such acceptance of, multicultural stuff of, different faiths and people of all different orientations. They really think that the more accepting this culture gets, that the more bad shit is allowed to happen, and gay marriage is like a part of that.
Right. And I would like to change the conversation, hopefully, to say, no, this is leading society to be more and more golden rule followers.
I like that.
That is all of this. This is all golden rule all the time. That's all we're doing. That's all any of us want.
I think that's a smart approach to take to it. I think you're going to reach more people who are currently on the anti-gay marriage side that way. You know, more flies with honey, etc.
I can always hope so.
Yeah.
Well, I think it makes perfect sense, though. And you're using language that they understand. They understand golden rule. They understand the first commandment, the second commandment. You know, you're speaking to them in terms they can understand, and you're giving them a way of accepting something that really at this point in life, I think we're all pretty much coming to the understanding that it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. You know, gay marriage is going to happen. Whether it happens this go round or next go round or the one after this, it's coming, and we're not going to be able to stop that. What you're actually offering them is a very good way to not only justify it, but to support it as it happens.
They can be wrong. It's okay for them to admit that they're wrong if they're going to be Jesus wrong.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, because many of us are Jesus wrong, right? There's tons of people in this society that, well, just don't believe the way you do and will go to hell if your mythology ends up being correct. But that's not the point. We follow the golden rule in society as a whole. And so I hope to get that out there. That's the focus of some advertising I'd like to do to stop this amendment that's coming up. It's called Amendment 8 in Florida, where they're going to remove the no aid clause from the Florida Constitution. And right now in the Florida Constitution, public tax money is utterly forbidden from going directly or indirectly in aid of sectarian or religious organizations. And so they're going to try and strip that out, which would make the Florida Constitution as permissive as possible to get public money to support religious institutions insofar as the Establishment Clause allows. In other words, the Establishment Clause already forbids direct payments of tax money to religious institutions. And so what they want to do is remove the part that forbids indirect payments.
Wow. Sneaky.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys are on that.
Absolutely.
Well, we're trying to be on it.
Yeah.
But with how the amendment was written, it's just sneaky, vile marketing bullshit text mingled in with the amendment. So it's going to be very tough to defeat, but hopefully we can do it.
We're speaking with Mark Palmer, and he is the executive director for the Humanists of Florida Association. Now, Mark, you, a former Mormon, obviously have really stepped out and you are shining. Life is rocking and rolling. What would you tell to a Mormon who is listening to this podcast, probably still going to be going to, I don't know what you call it, church? Going to church. Okay. On Sunday, is that right?
Yep.
I don't know the Mormon thing. They're probably going to be going to church this Sunday, or to that Mormon who has finally said, okay, I don't believe it anymore, I'm walking away. What would you tell them? What would you give them as a nugget to take from this that can help them in their own journey in reaching for that place of success that you obviously have found?
Right. Making that change and making that shift, being open and honest about your disbelief if you are really an unbeliever, being open and honest about that is not as scary and horrible as you think it will be. Your family will probably not hate you and reject you at least 2 or 3 weeks later. They'll probably be okay. They'll come to accept you. They might try and love you back into the fold eventually. But it's okay. It's okay to be honest. Step away. Your life will go on. And if it doesn't, you will still be happier. In other words, if your life falls apart, if you end up losing your family over this, in a worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
You will be happier as an honest and open person, and you get to stop living a lie.
That's awesome. Libbie, what would you leave?
I would say that's kind of tough. I don't know, because I had such a boring experience with coming away from Mormonism. I would say there are resources out there for you to build another community. Community is really important. Like Mark said, the likelihood, I think, with Mormon families that they're going to absolutely reject you forever is small. It's not like leaving, say, the Jehovah's Witnesses, where that's sort of built into their belief structure that someone who leaves must be gone forever. The likelihood that you'll be permanently rejected is small. It may change your relationship with your family, but you will be happier being honest about who you are. And there are resources out there for you to build up a new community that will support you as you are.
A good place to start is x-mormon.org.
Yes.
They have a great message board. I spent several months screaming and raging and freaking out there on the message board. As part of my decompression and deprogramming process, I left that behind years ago now at this point, but it was very helpful right as I was shooting out of the gate and got to talk with other people who were in my same position. I mean, they have ex-bishops who are the leaders of congregations. They have ex-stake presidents there. They have one ex-temple president.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
It's very impressive. These are folks who, some of them who feel like they've wasted 50 years of their life on this Mormon thing, but they're still happier that they left it behind and have come out. So that's a great place to decompress, at least initially.
Yeah, and there's, of course, resources like recoveringfromreligion.org where you can find local groups. And you can always laugh with us. We're here for you. We're your friends, even if you've kind of lost all your other ones.
We love you.
Absolutely.
Aww.
And if you ever want to chat with an individual ex-Mormon, I am always open for it. Hit me up on Twitter or something. And I'm always happy to talk with. Oh, okay. Atheist_ESQ on Twitter. Always happy to talk to ex-Mormons.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. We have a bunch of links we're going to be putting up with this episode, and hopefully this can reach some people who don't need to feel quite so alone in their ex-Mormonism.
Absolutely. And we are trying to, just a bit of internal housekeeping here. We've had people say, well, you're kind of heavy Southern Baptist and Pentecostal. And we are. I'm Pentecostal, and I understand Southern Baptist because I grew up there, and my brother is a Whig with a big Baptist organization in the South. So, but what we are trying to do, we do have, emails and people from Mormon say, when are you going to have a Mormon on? We've had some others. So what we're doing is we're expanding, and Libbie is going to be our go-to Mormon.
I'm the Mormon consultant.
Yes.
I like that.
So, because I don't even know what questions to ask a Mormon, honestly. I mean, I don't know what day they go to church. So, but by doing that, and we've got other people that we're lining up for some other faiths as well, what we're trying to do is be more inclusive and offer an opportunity to have some recovery and some direct relating to people of different religions and different faiths. So thank you so much for climbing on board with us, Libbie.
No problem. I'm happy to do it.
Mark, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. We've had a great time talking, and most importantly, I think if you want to know something about Mark and about where he came from, his Human Tales podcast episode, where it was a recording of a public speech he did all about kind of the primer for what the heck is going on being a Mormon, that's the one to go to, and I learned so much. So I will put that link up for sure.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me, you guys.
I'm Rich Lyons.
I'm Deanna Joy Lyons.
I'm Libbie Grant.
I'm Mark Palmer. Come laugh with me.
You've been listening to the Living After Faith podcast, the official podcast of recoveringfromreligion.org. The music in this episode is Rosecross by Morrison's Prophecy. You can follow on Twitter at LAFwithme, like Living After Faith on Facebook, or go to livingafterfaith.com. Thank you for listening to Living After Faith.